live. We are here with the lovely Emma from Nugent Solicitors, who is going to be helping us help you guys get through the general employment permit program and process and everything and all the stress and grey hair that goes along with it. Welcome, Emma. How are you today?
Hi, Vicky. Thank you very much for having me on today. I'm
Oh,
great.
it's a pleasure. It's lovely to have you here. You've been very highly spoken of by our community that we've got on the SA2A group. You've actually helped one of our admins when she came over a few
Oh,
years
great.
back.
Yes, I've been doing this work for about 14 years, and over those years, I've worked with a lot of people from South Africa, and I've always really enjoyed it. So I'm glad to hear that it's gone well for members of your community.
I know they appreciate you, and we appreciate you, Emma. Thanks for always stepping up and helping where you can with this. It's such a stressful thing for people to go through. But today we're going to look at it's a four-part series for those of you who are watching. So we're going to look at part one of the four-part series, and then you're welcome to remember to look at the rest of the series as you go, as you need to. And in part one, we're going to look specifically at general employment permits. And Emma's going to give us a lovely overview with regards to that. Do you get a lot of people that contact you for general employment permit issues, Emma?
Yes, I found over the years, I think especially because there's been so much change with South African nationals becoming visa required, it's
Mm.
with Brexit, with Britain leaving the EU, it's definitely I think employment permits in general, I think are on the up in terms of interest in them and the clients we work with to try and obtain employment permits. For me anyway, it has increased over the years. And I think the thing about the general employment permit system, I would say in the last 5 years or so, the categories of employment that you can get an employment permit for have really expanded. I
Okay.
would say about 5 years ago it was more restrictive, but in more recent times, I think there's been a recognition that certain industries have a shortfall in the people who have the skills to do that work. So there is, I think, quite a lot of scope in terms of the categories of job that now that you can get a general employment permit for. But I'm like the big thing that people struggle with, people that I meet, is they might have the skill set to do it, they might really want to do it, but it's finding the employer who's willing to undertake, and
Mm.
apply for an employment permit for them. I think a lot of employers maybe don't understand the process or haven't done it before, or they don't have any staff that they've done it for, and they might be a little bit hands off that they struggle to want to go down that road. Um, I don't know if that's your experience
It's
as
it's
well.
very it's very overwhelming, and especially I think a lot of people don't look at the general work permits by default because there's the thing like with Australia, there's the scoring system and everything like that. So people do think that it is only like really, really highly qualified careers that would be able to get work permits. And they don't understand that there is the general employment permits that is available in Ireland. It is connected to the things that it is to in terms of what you have, the criteria you have to meet in order to get it. But it is definitely a lot of people don't understand that if it's not on the ineligible list and it's not on the critical skills list, it is then eligible for a general work permit if the criteria is met. Tell
Yes.
us a little bit about the criteria that you find that people tend to overlook.
Yes. So you're totally right. I find the way that the system works is quite confusing, that basically you need to be on neither list. There's definitely a bit of misunderstanding about that. Some people look at the ineligible list and think they have to be on that list. But you're right, for general, you basically do not want your job to appear on either list. So I find the lists a little bit confusing as well because they have the name of a job, and that's another thing that catches people out, is that one job could have five different names for it, and they would just search. Like, for example, mechanics used to be ineligible, but they now are eligible. But you would have a lot of people search for mechanic and it doesn't come up because it's listed as vehicle trades. So it was actually excluded, but people maybe had a misunderstanding that it wasn't. So whenever I meet someone, the first thing I always say, well, your first hurdle is, are you eligible? And that's what we look at first. And I always have to do a little bit of digging. It's not always obvious to me straight away if something is eligible or ineligible,
Mm.
because you might know this, Vicky, yourself, but if people don't understand, there's like, you have the name of the job, but then you have the code beside it.
Yes.
And it's fundamentally the code that is the most important. And there's a big, big, long document. Like, I can share it with anybody that needs it, because there's a bit of digging to be done to find out if you're eligible, and you go to this document called Standard Occupation Classification List. And also, just to say, it's a bit confusing. The one we use in Ireland is from 2010, but for anybody who's looking into going to the UK and Ireland maybe at the same time to see which option is best for them, my understanding is the UK uses the 2020 version, so actually the codes don't always align
Mm,
between the UK and Ireland. But that's the digging that I would do, is I'd then find the code for the job that the person is potentially interested in. And the standard occupation classification list, it gives you kind of a summary of what that person would do.
mm,
So I think sometimes people maybe don't understand as well. It's more than a job title, and then it's actually more than a code.
yes,
You have to get down and say, well, like, what do you do? Like, what would you do on a day-to-day basis? What would be expected of someone in that role? And then the other thing about general employment permits is you don't need a degree. Like for example, if you're looking at the critical skills, if you're going for the salary of just over 40,000, you have to have a degree. But
yes,
like there's a lot of general employment permit positions that you wouldn't necessarily need a degree to do those jobs, but you do. It has to make, I always say to people, like, it has to make sense why this job is being offered to you. Like, have you done it before? Have you done it for a few years, etc.? Because the Department of Enterprise aren't just going to take the code and tick a box and say yes,
yes,
fine. They're actually going to look into it and say, well, like, does it make sense that this person would be offered this job? And then they're going to look into the other kind of side of it, which is like, does it make sense that that type of business would need that type
mm,
of role? And if you can kind of get that together, then you've ticked off that first box, which is the job eligible? Am I
yes.
suitable to do it? And like overall, does the whole application make sense?
And
Um, yes, yeah.
And just for people who don't want to go through the slog of finding out the information themselves, we do at SA2A offer the service of the eligibility check.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
if you're not 100% certain, you can get hold of us. I've posted the link in the chat there for anybody that is interested. It costs €5 for us. We do the slog work for you. We find out, we look at you and your spouse to see where we can see if you are qualifying for a general work permit. And many times people don't even realize that they qualify for a coming over as the partner of someone with a specific passport, because it's not something that they've looked at, and they're only looking at careers thinking that they don't qualify, or they're only looking at the ineligible list thinking that that is the list. We look at your whole scenario and we look at what it is that you do. And as Emma mentioned there, what are your skills as opposed to the jobs that you have? And
Yes.
then based on that, we have a look. So if anyone is interested, they can get hold of us for that. Like I said, it's €5 for it, and we do the slug work for you. Send back the full report for you, which gives you that confidence to then proceed.
Yeah, I think that's like anybody, because I always think some jobs are what they are, like if you're, say, I don't know, an accountant, you're an accountant, but like there's lots of jobs that are called different things,
Mm,
especially now, like there's so many different titles for jobs. And you might think, oh, I'm not eligible, but actually you might be. And it's great then if you can figure out the code, and then
yes,
you search the code on the list and it doesn't appear, then you're in a good position to make the application. So I would definitely recommend anyone to do a bit of digging, or take up that service, because it's not always obvious. Like it takes a bit of digging to figure out the code.
absolutely. So it's the code is the first thing. Then we've got the salary.
Oh,
People
sorry, yes, I
overlook
skipped
this.
the salary. Yes.
People think that the salary is any salary, or they think that the salary has to be incredibly high. Tell us a little bit more. What do you see in terms of people with regards to salary qualification?
Yes. So the in a general sense, the minimum salary now is 36,605. But there are a few specific professions where the salary is lower. Like for example, healthcare assistants, home carers, meat operatives, like meat deboners, horticultural people who work in horticulture, they have a lower salary, and it's 32,691.
Okay.
And then they have now, since they kind of introduced a roadmap on salaries, and one of the things they've recognized is that, well, this would be more for people who are maybe already here. Say, for example, if you had come from South Africa, maybe to do international study.
Okay.
If you've graduated from a level 8 course within the previous 12 months, you can benefit from a lower salary than the general employment permit. So the salary that you would have to meet is slightly lower. It's 34,000
Okay.
um and €9. So if you had someone here who was here as an international student, I think it was in recognition of the fact that some people are on graduate schemes or they're doing like graduate entry level employments, and they would be eligible in terms of the job they're doing, but the salary they have is kind of related to the fact that they've just graduated. So it's trying to give people a chance to get into the general employment permit system.
That makes
Um,
sense.
yeah, so I don't know if that applies. You know, if you're not in Ireland yet, that wouldn't apply, but it's a good kind of exception that they're giving to younger
Yes.
graduates.
Oh,
Um,
that's good.
yes, and the salary now they're going to kind of the previous salary, which was a slightly lower at 34,000, it was there for years and years and years. But now the Department of Enterprise, you've probably seen it as well, Vicky, they're going to do like a more gradual increase every kind of in the next time they're going to up it is going to be in January next year.
Okay.
So it's another thing to keep an eye on because it might take you some time to find the employer, get the job, get the contract. Just check at the time you're submitting it that the salary threshold has, remained the same.
That's it. And people need to take into consideration the processing times of these applications
Yes.
because people forget that they need to apply for the general work permit first. Once they've got the general work permit, only then can they apply for the entry visa,
Yes.
which is a whole different ballgame with a whole different waiting period. So it's very important that you do your research prior to actually coming over and speaking to an employer. We've seen so many people who had to work with the disappointment of finding the job, having the job offer, getting the work permit, and then the employer is just not prepared to wait out the period that it takes them to get the visa on top of it. Because by that point, it's already quite a long process that's taken place. And let's face it, when they get the CVs, they don't just get one CV, there are multiples of it. So it's often the easier option for them to just go to whoever was next in line.
Yeah, I find that too. Like that's the struggle that I see is to find an employer who's kind of willing to go through this process because we'll chat about it in a wee bit, but there's the advertising to be done.
Mm,
So that's kind of the one of the main downsides, I think, of the general employment permit is that advertising has to be done. And some employers aren't keen to do it because obviously then they have to take in all of the applications that they receive and handle that advertising.
yes,
But not only do they have to go through this process, but you're right, then because South Africa is now visa required for the last number of years, it's a two-stage process. And I would say the Department of Enterprise is pretty efficient. They have a new portal system. It is quite fairly user friendly to apply for an employment permit. And then the processing times, I think I looked yesterday for general, it's between 6 to 7 weeks.
mm,
So it is pretty efficient. But then you're right, then you have to go to the Department of Justice with your employment visa application. And you're right, that's a whole different, you know, that's back to going to VFS. That's back to giving everything as original. That's back
yes.
to like really onerous requirements. And like you just want to tick all of the boxes, have all of your letters exactly how they want it. It's really not user friendly, I would say, the visa system.
No,
But yeah, if you compare it like to the employment permit system, but and then you've got processing times. I was looking, they're advising you to apply 8 weeks to 3 months in advance, but
yes,
um, my experience is it's not always processed in 8 weeks to 3 months. In
no.
fact, that would be the exception to the rule, I would say.
I would say that they are going way over what the estimated timeline is. So if you are looking into this process, ask on our Facebook group how long it is taking for people who are in the process at the moment. The other thing that you have to take into consideration, Emma will touch on it a little bit later, is the family reunification part of it. But
Yes.
we're going to get to that in, I think it's part 3 of the series. So we'll go a little bit deeper into that, have a little bit more of a chat on that. This is the end of part 1. And we would like to say thank you to everybody who has watched it. If you find this conversation interesting, please share this with other people. Help other people who may also be interested in the journey, even if it's just someone that you've spoken to who've mentioned that they might be thinking of it. Give them the information so that they've got everything in front of them to make an informed decision on what they're looking at. Then subscribe to our channel, turn on your notifications, and please like this post and watch part 2. Emma, thank you so much for being here for our members for this and for the general public. I believe that a lot of people are going to get a lot of help through this, and we appreciate you being here. We look forward to seeing you in part 2.
Thank you very much, Vicky.
Thanks, Emma. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.